way that supports them while also supporting us, protecting our own mental and physical health and try to protect us from secondary trauma. In this session, we're going to talk about how do we lead organizations that are empathetic, trauma-informed, that are supportive of the community and the work that we're doing in the community, but also the employees there, and making sure that everybody who is working to support the organization is feeling supported themselves. I have a PowerPoint and I'm going to go through that in a minute, but first off, I just wanted to start with a quick story. I teach a class on trauma-informed leadership at Dominican University, which is just outside of Chicago. They have a master's in trauma-informed leadership program there. And my students in that class are people who I imagine are a lot like you. I mean, they're professionals who have chosen to devote their careers to helping people who are in often very dire situations. And they do that with passion and dedication and kind of unwavering commitment. And sometimes, fortunately, they don't get the kind of support from their leadership that they really need. And there was a class where I asked the students, have you ever had an experience where you felt like your leadership didn't really provide you the kind of support that you needed? And one student said, oh yeah, I do. Absolutely, no problem. And she said, so her name is Tracy, and Tracy works in child and family services. And really what she does is often goes into homes to investigate and sometimes remove children from the home if they're in a dangerous situation. So it's a very, very high stress, challenging job. And then she had been doing it for about 10 years with a team that she really liked and trusted, and they all really supported one another. And then one day, new leadership came in for the organization. And the leadership said, pretty early on, they said, we have a big change coming. So everybody stay tuned. We don't want to let you know what it's going to be, but it's going to be exciting. So everybody just be ready. So you can imagine nobody's thinking like, oh, we're going to get every Friday off, right? They're thinking, this is making me really nervous. I don't know what's going to happen here, but this sounds scary. So already there was a lot of anxiety around what this was going to be and very little, almost no information. And then one day, it was a Monday, they put everybody on a bus and took them to another location. And they said, well, what we want to roll out is we have decided to do a reorganization. And what that meant was every single team was being broken up. People were being reassigned to roles that they had no background or experience in. They were not going to be given any training, any additional training for these roles, and they were going to start immediately. So that was the information given. They would take no questions. And they said, if anybody has a problem with this, there's the door. So you can imagine how that felt. I mean, as Tracy put it, she said, my team that I had been with for a decade, she said, it felt like their home had been shattered. These were people that she had built really good long-term trusting relationships with, and they were all being sent to different teams. In particular, another challenge on top of the personal issue was the concern about, am I really qualified to do this new role that I'm being put in? It's an important role, and I don't feel like I have the expertise or the support to do it well. She talked about one colleague who had been on an adoption team, which was about, bringing a family together. I mean, it was generally a pretty happy team to be on. This woman was put on a child abuse team, and on her first day on the job had to witness an autopsy. And she quit that day, unsurprisingly. One of the things that I have seen again and again as I do training and consultation with organizations around the country is there are so many organizations doing incredible work in our communities that are showing up with compassion and commitment and skill to meet the needs of community members. But again and again, I'm seeing organizations that are doing phenomenal work in the communities, but their own house is not in order. They're not getting the support, the leadership that they need to make sure that the people who are doing this challenging work are also being valued and seen and supported within the organization. And so that's why this is such an important topic for me, and why I'm so glad that you're here to talk about it. I'm going to share my screen now and start doing a little bit of the slides, but I want you, as I'm going to remember that the goal here is, as much as possible, to have this be a conversation. So I'm going to have my little chat box going. Please chime in. I know that you all have phenomenal expertise in this area, and I want us to get the value of that as well. Like, I think one of the great things about having this organization and these types of calls is that you're surrounded by colleagues who are, dealing with similar issues, maybe having faced some things that you're facing right now. Let's make use of everybody's knowledge to the extent that we can. All right. So how about in the chat, just drop in a little hello, glad to be here. Maybe just something about your mood today. If you can just say hello in the chat as we get going on this. And also, I would love to just hear either in the chat or with a thumbs up if you can see my slides. You actually see them? Awesome. Excellent. Thank you. Hi, Sherry. Hello. Hi, Lori. Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, good. Hi, Liz. All right. So I want to start off with just, what is empathetic leadership? Love to see all those great hellos in the chat. Hi, everybody. So, just in your own mind, like if you can think of, maybe think of somebody that you have worked for or even observed, even it could be a famous person, but just think of somebody that you think of who is, you would say, an empathetic leader. And oh my gosh, there's 2 Lori Schaefers. That's really funny. So maybe just drop in the chat a name of a person or a couple people that you think of who are empathetic leaders. And again, it could be somebody that you know personally, or somebody famous, somebody in the news, just anybody that you can think of who you would call an empathetic leader. Pope Francis. Oh yeah, great. Love that. Thanks, Jen. Anybody else? Wow, Sister Karen Dietrich. Wonderful. Lauren Schaefer's. Oprah Winfrey. Excellent. I love these. And as you're thinking of them, what are the things that you thought of immediately? Like when you read those names, Dolly Parton, yep. When you read those names, what is it about them that you think, that's why I would say they're a really good empathetic leader? Like, can you think of any adjectives or any actions? Yeah, kind-hearted, caring, willingness to engage. Liz, I love that your coworkers. Yeah, Adam Grant, perfect. Brene Brown, curious. Yeah, takes responsibility for errors and apologizes. I love that, Jen. Yeah, willingness to listen, compassionate. Shannon, I love that your current supervisor qualifies. Compassion. Yeah, and Maggie, centers others. Right. Yeah. These are all wonderful, wonderful. I'm going to give you the definition. This is kind of my working definition. There's nothing magic about it, but when I think about empathetic leadership, these are the things that I focus on. Oh, thank you, Shannon. Allows us to be human. Perfect. Yeah, and you'll see it. To me, that word human is really central to this. So I think of an empathetic leader as somebody who is managing their emotions and their actions, both for the good of the organization and also for the humans within it. Let's make sure that we are recognizing that this team, this group, this organization, this cohort is made up of human beings who are all having unique human experiences. And let's figure out how we can recognize, value, and support them where they are. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Marie. Leads by example, not expectation. Perfect. Modeling is something we're going to talk about a lot. One more thing I want to notice about this definition, though, is there's nothing here about a job title. So an empathetic leader, and notice as well in the chat, nobody said anything about you have a particular role that you are a director of or a vice president of or anything like that. We lead, all of us, from where we sit. We lead by the example we set, the ways that we show up every day. That's how we are leaders. And regardless of what role you have in the organization or in the team, you can affect the culture of the organization when you lead with empathy. So yeah, excellent. Oh, and thank you, Cindy. Works to build trust. We're going to talk about that a lot too. Okay, so next I'm going to talk a little bit about why empathetic leadership matters, and I'm going to go through a few psychological concepts called institutional betrayal and psychological safety. After that, I'm going to go through what are the practical steps we can take to be more empathetic leaders and help build empathetic organizations. So first off, let's talk a little bit about institutional betrayal. Had any of you heard of this term before? Is this something that you're familiar with? Yeah, a little bit. Some of you maybe, maybe not. Okay, so I'm going to explain it to you the way that it was explained to me. The term institutional betrayal grows out of the work of Dr. Jennifer Fried, who's a psychologist at the University of Oregon. I first learned about it from Dr. Ann DePrince, who is a psychologist who studied under Jennifer Fried. So the way that Anne explained it to me is by walking me through a few hypotheticals. So first, I want you to imagine a child who's been abused by a parent. And there can be physical injury, maybe bruises from that abuse, but then on top of that, there's a psychological injury from the fact that the child was hurt by someone that he looks to for support and protection. That psychological injury can last far longer than the physical one. So long after the bruises have faded, that psychological injury can remain. Next, I want you to imagine a college student who's sexually assaulted on campus, and she goes to her campus Title IX coordinator, and instead of being supportive and giving her access to resources, the Title IX coordinator kind of minimizes what she went through or implies that it was her fault. Now, in this instance, there's obviously harm from the assault itself, but now there's a second harm on top of the first, caused by the institution itself in the person of that Title IX coordinator. So that Title IX coordinator represents the entire institution. This college student went to the institution for support in a time of need, and instead of being supportive, they exacted another injury by betraying the trust that she had placed in them. She said, I am vulnerable right now and I'm looking for support. And instead, they minimized what she went through. They hurt her. And so now we have a second injury on top of the first. And again, that second injury can be very long lasting. The example Anne DePrince gave me is she said, some of the college students she's spoken to have said, I knew that guy was a jerk, but I always thought my college would stand by me. And what Dr. Fried's research has shown is that the potential for institutional injury is stronger the more we personally align ourselves with the institution. So the more that our identity is kind of tied up in the institution, the stronger the possibility for institutional betrayal when the institution does not support us when we're looking for that kind of support. So in particular, some of the research looked at colleges and schools, the ways that schools are supporting or not supporting students and faculty. Military is another really strong instance, possibility for this. Any kind of church or religious groups, similarly, where the identity becomes very tied up in the institution itself, there's an even stronger possibility for institutional betrayal. But really, I think the key is that this idea that we are all associated with different institutions, and our workplaces are institutions that we align ourselves with and we go to every day. We spend a lot of time there. We, in particular, when we are in an organization that we have chosen because we believe strongly in the values that it is putting out in the community. We chose to work for this particular cause because it's one that we feel strongly about. I think it's important to be aware of this potential for institutional betrayal when the institution takes actions that we fear will harm us or harm people we love, or even when they don't take action that we think are necessary for protection. So things like the COVID response are a real opportunity for potential institutional betrayal if people feel like the response has been uneven or unreliable, possibly putting people in danger. That can be something that could lead to something like an institutional betrayal. Let me just pause for a second there and just check in. Does this make sense to you? Is it something that hearing the term now you think, oh, now I have a name for what I've seen? Yeah. Is it resonating? Okay. Yeah. It's hard. I get that reaction a lot, like, oh yeah, this is something that I have seen, and I didn't have a name for it before. And if you hadn't been familiar with the term before, it is something that you'll see again and again in the news, when we think about government reactions to different incidents. Are people making public statements when something horrific happens? All of those things come down to this sense of, do I feel like I can trust this institution to care about me? All right, so institutional betrayal is one half of what I wanted to talk about with regard to these psychological concepts. But then I really think of it as one side of the coin, and the other side of the coin is this idea of psychological safety. Psychological safety has been shown to have just an incredible impact on people's feeling of well-being, inclusion, engagement, creativity, loyalty, overall team performance. I first came across the concept when I read about a study that Google did in 2016. So Google wanted to find out what made the most successful team. What was a really good team? How do you put that together? And because they're Google, they can look at everything under the sun, right? Like they have access to all of the information. So what they did was they looked at all different formulations of teams. So they looked at teams where everybody had the same background or everybody had a different background. They looked at teams with one strong leader, no strong leaders, a lot of strong leaders. They looked at teams of all women and all men. They looked at teams that socialized after work and that didn't. And they couldn't figure out any kind of through line that would explain why some teams were more successful than others until they hit upon this idea of psychological safety. This comes largely out of the work of Dr. Amy Edmondson, who's up at Harvard. And the concept of psychological safety means that within this team, I feel safe to admit that I don't know the answer, or that I think I made a mistake, or that I'm having a really hard time right now. And teams where there was psychological safety, they built long-term trust that led to positive outcomes on every measure they were looking at. What Google concluded was psychological safety was 4 times more important than every other type of measure they were looking at. So when we have psychological safety on a team, we are much more successful on the team. But then the other thing that Google found in this study was that the fastest way to build psychological safety on a team was to support each other in hard times. In particular, they talked about one leader who had taken over a team, and that the team was kind of struggling, and they had an offsite meeting where they really had a very intense kind of personal conversation, and the supervisor opened up to all of them that he had recently received a cancer diagnosis and was very concerned about what this meant for himself and for his family. That was a real bonding conversation for the team. And the way they describe it is afterward, that team was so cohesive. They all felt like we can talk about really hard things here, and we know that we will support each other through it. And so when the next person has, maybe not a health issue, but some challenge that is affecting their ability to work in the way that they want to, they feel more safe opening up about that. So psychological safety on a team really is, to me, it's kind of the holy grail. It's what you want on a team, is that sense that I will be seen and valued no matter what, and it is okay for me to raise hard issues within this team. So who here feels like they are either currently on a team with psychological safety or they have been on one in the past? You can either raise your hand or put it in the chat. Excellent. Good. I love to see those hands up. Good. Wonderful, Renee. Yeah, excellent. Well, let's talk about what are some ways that we can either build or sustain that sense of psychological safety on a team. So for that, we're going to talk about how to be an empathetic leader. To my mind, I really think that there are 3 components of this. Acknowledgement, which means I feel heard. I feel seen and heard. Support, which means I can get support when I need it. I can get help. And then 3 is trust. I will be treated fairly. I know that I'll be treated fairly in this organization. So I'm just going to go through those one by one. First is this idea of acknowledgement, and I will be heard. This is going to lean pretty heavily on some of the things we talked about last time, in particular on this sense of listening and acknowledgement. So, as we've talked about previously, listening is active listening, which means not just letting the person talk, but creating the circumstances where they feel comfortable opening up by doing things like asking open-ended questions, giving them eye contact, watching your body language, looping, repeating back some of the words that they've said. I think the key here is really giving the person your full attention. I spoke with a leader once. She's the head of a nonprofit organization. And she said she's always so busy at work, right? She's running around all the time. And she said she realized that she would be passing somebody in the hall and she would say, "Hey, how you doing?" And like she would be halfway down the hall and realize that he wasn't even done answering her question yet. She was already gone, right? I think it's very common when we're super busy not to think through, like, let me just focus for a second on this person in front of me. But that's really key. That's part of how we show people that we care about them. So it's both the listening, giving them your full attention, and also acknowledging what they've shared. Like, thanks for sharing that. I'm sorry for everything you're going through. That sounds awful. Just, things that show them that you have heard them and that you acknowledge what they have shared with you. All right. So a little bit more on this. How do we create that place where people feel comfortable sharing of themselves? One is try to build in regular check-ins. There was a study recently by Work Human where they found that psychological safety was highest for employees who check in with their managers at least once a week. So in the chat, or again with hands raised, how many of you check in with your supervisor at least once a week? Do you do that? Kelly, excellent. Yeah, good. Tiffany, excellent. The same study found that only 29% of respondents said they check in with their manager weekly. So less than a third are having those check-ins, but that's that check-in was the best indicator of psychological safety on the team. Oh, good. Yeah, excellent. So people are actually saying not just with the supervisor, but with the whole team. Perfect. That's excellent. Good. So this is something, if it's not already a practice, try to think of some ways to build it in. Oh, Cindy, I love that. Morning huddles. Can you tell us a little bit more, Cindy, about what happens in a morning huddle? Like, how does that work? Oh, good, Marie. Excellent. You're meeting with your board president too. That's phenomenal. So just a few ideas I have. And Cindy, if you want to come off mute and explain, that's fine too, or you can type it in. Whatever.
Sure. I'm speaking to a clinical location where we have morning huddles specifically to digest what happened the day before, to get everybody on the same page, to see if there are any issues from the day before, and to plan how the day is going to go today. And it works really well because everybody knows about our patients and what needs to be done, and we support each other in that way.
That is excellent. How long does it take?
Oh, 10 minutes, not even 5 to 10 minutes. Just a quick huddle to get on the same page and make sure everybody's aware of what they need to know.
Perfect. Perfect. I love that. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, good. Excellent, Marie. And I'm glad you're checking in with staff weekly. Perfect. Okay, good. So just a few ideas in addition on this, if you're not already, if you don't already have a practice of this. One is I actually suggest making a list of the people to check in with. So this could be everybody on your team, or if you have a staff, your staff members, but have a list. And the reason I say that is because all of us tend to gravitate more towards some people than the others. So we maybe have things in common with people. Some people are maybe, we think they're really funny, or they're, optimistic and hopeful, and they make us feel good when we talk to them, right? There are some people that we are naturally going to gravitate more to than others. And so if we don't have a list, even if there's only 4 people on that list, if we don't have a list and check it off that we've done that, we are more likely to check in more frequently with the people that we are more comfortable with and feel better about, talking to. But the reality is that those people who maybe aren't as, hopeful, outgoing, optimistic, funny, easy to be around, those might be the people who need to check in the most. So I do think it's a good idea to have a list. Also, see if there's a way that you can, either through calendaring or through a check off or something, just have some way to track that it's happening and to carve out time for it. It could be, as Cindy was just sharing, we do this 10 minutes every morning. It could be maybe Friday afternoons, you walk around the office and check in with everybody. It could be that you decide first thing after lunch, you are going to do a quick call or text or Slack channel sort of check in with people. But just whatever it is, come up with something that works for you and allows you to have a check in on people. Then in terms of how to do it, those open-ended questions are going to be helpful again here. So just how are things going? The key is it's not just about work. You want to create the opportunity for a real discussion about, it could be if there's something weighing on them or even just something fun, interesting going on with their life. Those kinds of easy connections are really the stuff that relationships are built on. So maybe there's somebody new on your team. Try to find out what it is that's interesting to them. Do they really love football? Okay, so ask them about football. Is that something that makes them happy to talk about? Great, excellent. Just try to learn a little bit about each of the team members or the people that you're checking in on so that you can have those quick, easy interactions that really are the stuff of all relationships. Now, it is possible that sometimes you're going to talk to people and you're going to think, oh gosh, I just wanted a quick check-in. I just wanted like a 5-minute conversation, and now we're going 20 minutes and I have a million other things on my desk and I'm really stressed out. So I'm just going to give you a few tips on getting away gracefully if you need to. One is it can be helpful if you set expectations at the beginning. So if say you are calling a coworker and you say, hey, I just wanted to check in on you. I've only got like 10 or 15 minutes, but I just wanted to see how things are going for you, right? So you're setting the expectations from the beginning. Another tip, this is something I use a lot, interrupt yourself, not the other person. So maybe the person is going, very in depth into a football game that you didn't see. And you're thinking, wow, I just wanted like a really quick, not a play-by-play. You can say something like, wow, that sounds like oh my gosh, I'm just realizing what time it is. It's already 4:30. I got to go. So just try to find a way to interrupt yourself and not them. Now, all of that said, there may be moments where what you need is more than a quick check-in, and be open to that when that is the case. There are going to be times when, we may think, oh, this is just going to be a quick, easy check-in, and very quickly the person shares something pretty heavy that's going on in their life. In those moments, we have a choice to make. We can say, oh, well, I've got a schedule. I've got, a long list of tasks to do. I can't possibly blow off the next thing on my agenda. Or we can say, you know what? This stuff that's on my task list is not as important as this person and what they need right now. So let me show up for this person. I think that those moments are actually some of the most important moments in our relationships and often in our lives. I mean, if you think back on, a time in your life where you were having a hard time. Maybe it was a health issue or a divorce, or you lost a loved one, just, a time in your life where you were really struggling, and you think about the people who showed up and actually listened and were supportive of you in those moments. I mean, I got to say, when I think about those people, some of them I haven't talked to in 10 or 15 years, but if I got a text message from them today, I would be on the phone with them within the hour. I mean, I would drop everything to show up for them because of the ways they supported me when I needed. So those kinds of moments, I know that sometimes they sneak up on you and everybody's life is busy, but those moments, I think we should recognize them for the important moments they are and be willing to push other things aside to support people when they need it. Shannon in the chat is asking, any tips on what to do if there really is no way to offer more support at that moment? Do you mean because of your time that's available, Shannon? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, if there is like something that you really can't move in order to offer support, then and
Yeah,
say,
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
can get back with you in a little
Mhm.
while, but I'd love to there for you
Yeah.
more or something.
I mean, I think that's exactly the right way to handle it, is to say, "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry that you're going through this right now. I really want to talk about this and I want to support you. I have a 4:30 meeting I've got to get to right now. Can I come see you afterward?" And just schedule that time if you can right then. Um, and I think the key is just to be clear about what your boundaries are, and then listen to what would be helpful for them. So if you say, I've got a meeting at 4:30, can I come see you after? And they say, you know what, I've got to leave at 5, but maybe we can talk tomorrow. That's great. So you just, to me, the key to empathetic leadership is always clarity and choice. So you just be very clear about your boundaries and then let them choose what makes sense for them in terms of support. Okay. I hope that helps. Um, all right, I want to talk next about expressing gratitude. So I was sort of stunned by this study that I came across on gratitude at work, because when I think about work, I think, my gosh, we are constantly relying on each other. No matter what kind of work you do, you are relying on other people. They are doing things for you. You are doing things for them all the time. And so you would think it would be a place with high gratitude, but in fact, individuals, this study found, people are less likely to express gratitude at work than anywhere else in their lives. And 60%, so more than half, never express gratitude in the workplace. Like, never say thank you to anybody for anything at work. Isn't that stunning? Um, I remember speaking with this woman once, who she was like a young tech person, an IT person who worked at a startup in Silicon Valley. And she was very, very dedicated to the mission of this startup and what they were trying to do. And she was working, nonstop, pouring everything she had into this company and trying to get it off the ground, because she believed so strongly in the mission of what they were doing. And when I spoke to her, she had just quit. And she said, I loved that company. I thought I was going to be there for my entire career. And she said, but then, I realized I'd been there 7 years and my boss had never once thanked me for anything. He'd never said thank you.
So now I'm not in the picture.
Oh,
That's right there with the frogs.
oh, thank you. Excellent. Thank you, Tiffany. So I think that sense of people recognize what I'm doing. They recognize that I am doing work here and that is valuable. I don't think that we can overestimate how important that is. So I would love to see, again in the chat, do you feel like you have a culture at work where people thank each other? I was so horrified by the 60% never express gratitude in the workplace. Is that maybe, I don't know, maybe they were only looking at organizations that are particularly empathetic and compassionate. So is this something that you feel like people generally say thank you? Yeah, Jen, thanks. I'm good. I'm glad you do. Excellent, Liz. Yeah, I was a little horrified by that statistic. I hope that that's not the norm everywhere. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, thanks, Kelly. That's a good point. We all say thank you a lot, but I think we can all be a lot more intentional. Perfect. Yeah, that's good. So here's the thing about gratitude. Gratitude is this phenomenal thing that both feeds us and it feeds the people around us. So there was a study, they did a 10-week study where they had people write down their blessings, the things they were grateful for in their lives every day for 10 weeks. And then other people who just had to write down, kind of things that happened in their day for the same 10 weeks. And they found that after 10 weeks, the people who had expressed gratitudes, things that they were grateful for, their blessings, they felt better about their lives. They were more optimistic. They had fewer health complaints, and they spent more time exercising. Isn't that amazing? So it's having that practice of gratitude can really affect our physical and mental health, even when we're only doing it to ourselves. So I have a practice where every morning I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. I would love to see in the chat if anybody else has that kind of gratitude practice where they are consciously naming things that they are grateful for. It can be helpful to just name it to yourself, maybe at the end of the day, 3 things that you feel grateful for, or things that made you happy that day. You can write them down. A thing that is nice to do is write them down. I spoke with one woman who said if she's having one of those days where she feels really, really sorry for herself and she can't think of anything, she goes back and looks and reads in her journal all the things that she was grateful for before. Oh, Jen, I love that. You write 3 of these each day for your husband. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, oh, these are excellent. I actually also recently spoke with a woman who said she got a gratitude buddy where they would text each other every day, and it was at different times, but text each other every day one thing that they were grateful for. Oh, and Lori, you're doing it with your kids every night. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, so think about whether that's something that you could fold into your life. It's a really nice thing to have, but also think about whether you can recommit to expressing gratitude out loud to other people, things that you are grateful for to them for doing. And the key, I think, is to be specific about it. So it's not just like, hey, great work team, thanks so much. It's, I want to thank you, Megan, so much for the work you did on, getting that memo out that on time when we really needed it. So be very specific about what it is that the person did and why you're grateful for it. And try to do it in a regular way. The thing that's great, again, is it makes us feel good. It also makes them feel good. Yeah, I hope you guys are seeing in the chat. Yeah, Lori, you try to do a good deed every day. That's what a wonderful thing, and what a great way to focus your mind on doing good things for others. And Kelly, I love this. You and your friends do 3 good things, especially when one of us is having a hard time. How wonderful. And Cindy, great icebreaker for a team meeting. What a great idea to start off a team meeting with gratitudes for specific things that people have done. I think that's excellent. Thanks, everybody. All right, I want to talk next about, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room. So what I mean by that is sometimes we are all worrying about something. There is something really heavy weighing on all of us, and nobody is talking about it. This can be something that happens out in the world, like a school shooting, or the shooting in Buffalo. Some sort of mass shooting or event like that. It also can be really internal to the organization, like maybe half of the team has left in the last 6 months and nobody is addressing that. The thing is, if we want to have psychological safety on a team, we have to be willing to talk about the hard things. I know it can be uncomfortable, and I know sometimes it's really scary. You think, boy, if I open this can of worms, no idea what is going to happen next. So it can be scary, but the reality is, it is scarier not to, because all of those same things are being said, but they're all being whispered, little side conversations. And it's really going to affect the organization's success and mission over time if you don't create space to talk about hard things. So I'm going to share with you how I do it. But I would also love to hear in the chat, 1, if you have a culture where people do talk about hard things, and 2, if so, how do you do it? What are some things that you do to make that okay? So what I suggest on this front is, 1, have an icebreaker of some kind. So, you have your meeting, you let people know that they're welcome to attend this meeting, have some sort of icebreaker that's like an easy thing for people to talk about. So I love the idea of gratitudes. It can even just be something like your favorite morning beverage, great show you've seen recently, just something that gets everybody talking at the beginning. And then you have an explicit shift to the conversation with ground rules. So you could say something like, this is something I did with my class. We had class the day after the shooting in Uvalde, and I thought we have to talk about it. So I said, listen, I wanted, we have our agenda for the class, but I want to take a little bit of time, maybe 10, 15 minutes here at the beginning to talk about the shooting yesterday in Uvalde. You don't have to share if you don't want to. I just wanted to create some space if anybody does want to talk about how they're feeling. You don't have to have your camera on. If you want, you can walk away and come back in 10 minutes and participate at that point with the rest of class. But I just wanted to create some room if people do want to participate. So setting the ground rules, I gave timing. I told them that they don't have to participate. It's okay, even if they walk away if they need to. All of that is fine. So setting the ground rules. And then I think this is really important. As an empathetic leader, you have to go first. And this is, as we talked about earlier, modeling, the importance of modeling that it's okay to talk about hard things. So when I started off that discussion, I said, I got to say, I'm really devastated. I opened up Twitter this morning and I saw pictures of those beautiful children, and I just sank to my knees and I started sobbing. This is really, really hard right now. So modeling, opening up, it's okay to be honest about where you really are, and then ask the question. And it should, again, be an open-ended question. I'm sure other people are also having, different reactions, their own reactions. Would anybody like to share how they're feeling right now? So open-ended question. And then here's the hard part, my friends, you have to be quiet. I always want to jump in like right then. It's because it's so hard to have that silence, but people need a minute to talk, to like think about what they're going to say. In particular, if it's remote and they're typing, that's going to take a little while. So you have to build in a little bit of time for that. So I'm going to share with you my secret. You'll see me do it here too. I ask the question and then I take a drink of water. I always have a drink with me. So it forces me not to say anything, to fill that silence, to let people have time to think and then share what they want to share. Okay, and then once people are talking, it's important that everybody gets acknowledged for what they shared. So that's just hey, thanks so much for sharing that, Megan. Really grateful for your thoughts, Rob. I really see what you mean, Joanne. When it gets busy in the meeting, maybe a lot of people are talking at once, it can be hard, but I suggest actually keeping track, like write down notes on it so that you can go back and just, acknowledge each person by name and say, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts on this. I'm really grateful for it. Okay, so you acknowledge everybody. And then the last thing is end it well. So we talked about this some in the first segment of this conversation, but it's important that we end it in a good way that feels like closure. So give warning, everybody, hey, I know we only wanted to devote about 15 minutes. We have a few more minutes to go. Would anybody else like to share something more? And then thank everybody for participating. I'm so grateful that all of you took part in this conversation. I know that it can be hard to address these things, to talk about them, but I'm really grateful that we have each other to have these conversations. So I would love to just hear again, please unmute yourself or put it in the chat. Is this something that you all do? Do you have conversations about things like things happening out in the world or things within the organization? And what are some ideas about things that have been useful for you on that front? And then while I'm doing that, I'm going to share with you, I wrote an article on this as well that kind of went through all of those same steps. If you want to, if it's hard sometimes to process everything orally. So if you wanted to take a look, there's that article. So anybody want to chime in on that? You saw me take a drink, right? Okay, Shannon in the chat. If we end up with extra time at the end of a team meeting, my supervisor regularly asks if there are any issues we're having, support that we need, or if there's anything in the rumor mill that we would like to discuss. I love that she gives us that platform. Yeah, that's excellent. And I love that it is, it's a norm on your group. So people know that there is space for that. That's really, really great. I spoke with one woman who said that in their organization, they actually have a standing meeting at a particular time where that is there just for like, can we process anything that's going on right now? And they use it for, things in the news as well as things that are going on in the organization. It's just this space, and people don't have to come if they don't want, but it's kind of a held space. We know that at 10 a.m. on Thursdays or whatever it is, you can show up here and have a conversation if you need that support. So I think that's, it can be helpful sometimes to have it be a norm, so people know what to expect, and that, again, that there's a space to have these kinds of conversations. I think we all need to get better at having these conversations. I think so often we're afraid that it's going to go poorly. But again, I really think it's so much worse if we don't have the conversation, because that's where rumors fester and people's imaginations fill in. All right, I'm going to move on and talk next about support. And for this, remember the last one was I feel seen and heard. This one is I can get help. So a few things. One is just make sure that we actually have some policies and procedures, resources in place that support people. So this can be things like making sure that we have some sort of bereavement policy. Do we have mental health days in our organization? Do we have support for people who are caring for a loved one who's ill? And what kind of support is there? Do we have a policy on intimate partner violence? So those kinds of policies and tangible supports can be really, really crucial for people in times of need. So let's do what we can to make sure that those policies are there, but then also make sure people know about them. Because if you say it just one time, they're not going to remember it, because the first time you, for instance, mention that you have a mental health resource, maybe you have like an employee assistance program that provides free counseling. If you mention that one time and never again, there will be people who it just kind of slides right over them. They don't even register it because they don't need it at that time. But then 6 months or a year later, boy, they could really use that help. So we have to talk about them frequently. The other thing is we have to talk about them widely. I mentioned an intimate partner violence policy. You have no idea who might need that kind of support. So you just have to disseminate that information widely and let people take access to it when they need it. And then finally, in terms of what policies are needed, make sure that you're seeking input from the people that you are serving. So, a great thing could be having open lines of dialogue, right? So people feel comfortable talking to their supervisors about, listen, I think I'm going to need a couple of mental health days. Another thing, depending on how big your organization is, you might have some sort of affinity group or employee resource group where people who have a particular identity can meet. So maybe people with disabilities, people, African Americans, particular groups might be able to meet, and they might be able to share ideas for policies that would be supportive and helpful for them. It was interesting. I asked my students for some ideas on this, and they had so many great ideas: miscarriage policies, pet bereavement. So I wish that more people were more creative about the policies that can be out there to support people in need. All right, the next thing is this idea of transparency. Remember, information is also a form of support. When we feel out of control, our lives turned upside down, a real sense of clarity can be helpful. So clarity around things like COVID reopenings, really, really important for a lot of people. So make sure that we are sharing information repeatedly and widely. And be clear about things, just don't hide information about decision-making, about timelines. Just be as transparent as you can, even on things where you don't know the answer. Like, listen, we actually are not sure. I don't know when I'm going to make a decision about this, but I am looking at these issues right now, and I will be sure to share the information as soon as I've got it. All right, my friends. I know this is sort of a funny picture for a not very funny concept, but I do think it's important that we have to talk about burnout. I am sure that a lot of you and people in your organizations are experiencing burnout right now. Um, One of the challenges about burnout is it's very, very difficult to recognize. It creeps up on us and it manifests in things like a sense of helplessness, like, oh, there's nothing I can do to fix this. Um, it can manifest in sarcasm, bitterness, shorter tempers, apathy. Sometimes there's all different ways that it can manifest, but often it tends to take this idea of like, well, there's nothing anybody can do to help me, which is really dangerous, right? Because then how do you get out of it? So I think we all have to be better about calling it out in others, like, oh, I don't know, it sounds to me like you're having a hard time right now. Is there any way that we can maybe push some deadlines or get you some more help on this project? So try to recognize it in others and also in ourselves. Remember that idea of modeling. So can we model that it's okay to get help, to take a Friday off and just do nothing all day, and be open and honest that you're doing this because you're feeling burnt out and you need it. When we talk about accessing supports, we make it okay for other people to access supports as well. All right, so those were the first two. Remember, thing one was I can feel heard. The thing two was I will get support when I need it. And the third is I will be treated fairly. So for this, there's a few things that we need to do. One, our goal here is building trust, right? Showing people that they can trust us, that we can be relied upon. And there are a few things we can do. One is, again, that clarity, transparency, using clear language, sharing information widely. In addition, be consistent, follow through on your promises. This is how you build trust in any relationship, from with your spouse, your child, and at work. So follow through on your promises, but also be flexible. So remember I said earlier, the keys are clarity and choice. Be clear about your expectations and your boundaries, but then allow people as much flexibility as you can within that. Another thing that's important is cultural humility. Be willing to learn about others' experiences and backgrounds. Everybody, we live in a big, diverse world, and lucky us, right? That means that likely on your team, you have people from very different backgrounds than you. And that's a great opportunity to learn about what their background is. And you can do that a couple ways. One is go out and read or watch movies, listen to podcasts, learn about others' experiences through affirmatively taking steps to learn. I attended a funeral not too long ago for an older white man, and one of the people who spoke at the funeral was an Ethiopian man who had been who the deceased was his mentor. And he said he came to the US leaving everybody he knew back in Ethiopia. And this mentor had taken the time to learn a little bit of Ethiopian. So he spoke the language a little bit with him, and also had read a little bit about the culture and about current events in Ethiopia, so that he could feel bonded to his new mentor. Isn't that beautiful? And this was, probably 20 years later, and he still remembered how meaningful that was to him, that this mentor had taken the time to learn about his culture. So let's think about ways that we can all learn a little bit more about the people that we're working with, and try to meet them where they are, recognize their backgrounds, and provide them the support that they need. And then finally, I want to talk about this walking the walk. So it is one thing to say we have a value of no bullying, but sometimes that means we have to take uncomfortable actions to enforce that value. If our values are in name only, if they are paper thin, they are not serving anybody, and in fact are a disservice to our organization. So we have to be willing to take uncomfortable actions to build the kind of organization that we strive to have. So that means both taking action to call out behavior that is not in alignment with our values. It also means that we have to be willing to be vulnerable ourselves, to open up about our own challenges, because as we have talked about, we lead by example, all of us. All right, those are the things that I wanted to go through. I'm gonna, just because we're almost out of time, I wanted to share this information about how to stay in touch with me. I hope that you will. I love talking to you all, and I'm so honored to be back here talking with you, because I know about the important work that you're doing in your communities. But we do have just a few minutes, so I just wanted to open it up. If anybody had any comments, questions, additional pieces of information they wanted to share about things that are working well on your team, or things that you think, oh, I wish that we had a way to address this. Let's open that up now and let some time for discussion.
Catherine, I actually got a question that came in anonymously that I want to acknowledge. Wondering what to do in instances where you actually have a personality clash. Like, how do you show empathy in a situation where maybe you don't really actually get along with that individual, but obviously it's a work situation, so you have to, still maintain a professionalism?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one thing is, if it is possible, and maybe it's not, but if it is possible, see if there is a way to have one thing that you can bond on that is a safe thing to talk about that's not work related. So maybe you think this is somebody who I have nothing in common with, and I don't really like this person, but it turns out this person is also really good at crossword puzzles, and I love doing crossword puzzles. And so we have this one area of something that we can talk about. So if possible, try to have that kind of a safe thing that is an easy thing to fall back on. Another thing is to recognize you don't have to be best friends. You don't have to like this person. You just have to work together. So try to find if there are ways to kind of get to a place where you don't feel hurt by their, sometimes it's people who say things that hurt your feelings, or can be challenging for you. Recognize, okay, this is this person's personality. They just talk this way. I don't think that they mean to harm me. And even if they do, that's kind of on them, not me. What I need from this person is X. I need them to get me these figures by the end of the week. And as long as I get those, then whatever it is that they're going to grumble about or be mad about, or, is on them and not on me. Obviously, we have to set clear boundaries, though, if it is crossing the line and becoming abusive. So if the person is speaking to you in ways that are completely inappropriate, that's where you should feel empowered, if you feel safe to do so, to set a clear boundary and say, please don't speak to me that way. Here is what I need from you, and I would like to get it by email or some other way, right? So, try to find an easy thing to talk about if you can. Recognize that their behavior is on them and not on you. But if they are crossing the line and becoming abusive, know that it's okay to set a boundary and get outside support if you need to. I guess that's what I would say. I would love to hear in the chat if anybody has other ideas on this.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions, ideas? All right, I know we're out of time, so I just wanted to share this last slide. You've probably seen this quote before from Maya Angelou, but I find it such an important thing to keep in mind. I'm somebody, I love a to-do list. I love having my agenda and getting things marked off, but I think it's important for all of us to keep in mind that while it is great to be productive and knock things off the to-do list, the relationships we have with others and the ways that we support people in need in the times that they really need us most, those are the things that will last the longest, and are going to have a long-term impact on our organization success, on our relationships, and on our physical, our mental health, and our well-being. Oh, Tiffany, I'm glad you have that quote. So I just want to thank you all. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you so much for having me back. It's really fun to talk with you again. Please do stay in touch. I would love to hear about how things are going. And if there's ever anything I can do to be of service, please know that I am here and I would love to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Catherine. This was wonderful, and I know so enlightening. So thank you for your time. And if anybody has any questions for Catherine, please feel free to message her directly. She did share her contact information. And if you have any other ideas for topics for trainings, please let us know. We try our very best to meet your needs and hear from you. So thanks again, Catherine. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all.
Have a great night, everyone.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.